Welcome everybody to Pat's Maps, which has been fun to say around the office and get tripped up all over that. Welcome again to Pat's Maps. We're excited for you all to be here. We're going to be talking about, a tool that has been so useful for the ALS community. And so I'm excited to, one, get a deeper explanation of it and just be introduced to the incredible people who are putting this together. Quick introduction of myself. If you don't know, my name is Michael Lecker. I'm the Director of Organizing at I Am ALS. I've been here for 3 years. That job just means I get to work with a lot of the people in this room every single week, and that is a pleasure. But if you don't know, I Am ALS is a nonprofit that's community-centric, started in 2019 by Brian and Sandra, looking to revolutionize the way that we have the movement against ALS. So we are a patient-centric movement, which means that we have community teams that meet every single week, and they help drive forward our the goals of the community. On the organizing side, like I said, we have community teams which we meet every single week, anywhere from veterans to many shades of ALS, to familial ALS, and then to topic-based groups like clinical trials and legislation. If you're interested in learning more about any of these groups, you can email me at michael@iamals.org. We also have a community support team, and that community support team has support groups and also a peer support initiative, which connects mentors to mentees. If any of those programs are of interest to you, please feel free to email me or any other person at I Am ALS, and we'll be happy to connect you. I am going to hand it over now to Mark.
Thank you, Michael. Well, hello, everybody. It's so great to see so many of you, all of you here. It just warms my heart. Pat asked me to read his, and by the way, I am the wife of Pat's Maps. The wife of Pat. I'm not married to his maps, but I love them. And he asked me to read his opening statement, his introduction to his maps. So this is from Pat. He says, "Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to give you a tour of the ALS Geospatial Hub, the central location to access all Pat's maps. Today, we will go into greater detail on how we develop the maps and do analysis to identify gaps in care, potential new caucus members, and environmental and demographics data used for research. Before we start, I wanted to give you a little background about the ALS Geospatial Hub. The purpose of the hub is to organize information by geography to identify patterns and relationships. This information is then analyzed to find barriers in accessing care, to locate environmental risk factors linked to ALS, and to develop policy maps to support neurodegenerative disease legislation. Ultimately, the mission of all this shared and organized data is to support your mission, so we want to hear from you. Our team of GIS professionals and ALS advocates, the mappers, are developing maps to support the ALS community's key initiatives, remove barriers to care, support legislation to get treatments and therapies that have proven to be safe and effective, support researchers by collecting and organizing information by geography so they can focus on analysis and not data gathering. 3, my main call to action for you is to, 1, collaborate on developing a national ALS Clinic database. Take the survey that Kylan will talk about. 2, become an ALS Legislative Advocate. And 3, register with the CDC ALS Registry if you haven't already. I will turn it over to my friends and colleagues to showcase our work and why those 3 calls to action have such a positive impact on the ALS community. First is my great friend and one of the most talented persons I know. I love her too. That's from me. Lauren Bennett, to showcase our work in mapping for care.
Hi, everybody. I am Lauren Bennett. I am, as just a little introduction, I am an old colleague of Pat's for many years. We go back a long way. I am really involved in spatial analysis. So my day job is I build tools to do all sorts of different kinds of spatial analysis. And so when Pat asked if I would help do some analysis and access to care for ALS clinics, I, of course, jumped at the opportunity to help however I could. And I'm going to share a little bit of that work. So the idea behind the Maps for Care project really started with Pat and this goal to develop the most comprehensive ALS clinic database in the nation at no cost, just as a resource for the broader community. And the idea is that having that database would allow us to not just locate the closest clinic, but also understand where there's really gaps in that care and why. And also kind of a really exciting and important new development is also the ability to share your clinic experience so that folks can use that in deciding what clinic to go to, and also to help, make sure that care only gets better. And this, for some reason, is not updating. So now you know for sure we're live, and I'm really showing something on the fly because it wasn't updating. I promised I would do something like that. So this is a picture of Pat kind of inaugurally showing off his idea. He jokes that not everyone was impressed with it, but I know that's not true. Everybody was impressed with it. And I think that the goal here is to show you a little bit more about that. So this is a view of those of the data set as we have it so far. So far we've mapped over 200 clinics nationwide. It's really the first database like this of its kind. Pat says that it says here that the partnership has saved 100,000 eye gazing clicks per year in gathering that clinic information, that partnership with partnering with the ALS Association to share that clinic information. And so this collaboration helps keep that information as up to date as possible. It also powers the ALS Association's ALS Clinic database and powers that clinic locator that you can access. Now, a really important part of this is if you don't see your clinic on the map, one of our kind of big calls to action is to get involved and share your clinic location so that it can be added to the database, and we can make sure we keep this database as up to date and accurate as possible. And later in the presentation, you'll get a sense of just how to do that really easy, all from one kind of single place, one single hub. We also have been working on a map of just the Veterans Affairs, the VA ALS clinics. I'm guessing that many of you know that veterans are 2 to 10 times more likely or more at risk of developing ALS than the general population. And so understanding those specific VA ALS clinics is also really important, and we want to understand that as well and what access to care looks like in that space. And really in addition to just being able to locate a clinic closest to you, one of the biggest reasons that we wanted to explore this data is to understand what gaps in access to care are. So this map that we're looking at here is looking at a 90-minute drive time from all of those 200 plus ALS clinics. And I think it's pretty obvious, right, just from looking at it, that there are a lot of places in the United States that are well beyond a 90-minute drive time from an ALS clinic. And so that's a really big challenge. One of kind of the summaries here is that there's 109 major cities with 11 million people living in them that are more than 90 minutes from the nearest ALS clinic. We also looked at multidisciplinary clinics to see what those gaps looked like. There's 267 major cities covering 32 million people that are more than 90 minutes from the closest ALS clinic. This is particularly important because the ALS Act in 2022 is new legislation that Medicare cover treatments at multidisciplinary clinics. And I know that Pat's hope is that will increase the number of multidisciplinary clinics that exist in the US, and understanding where these gaps in care are is a really important first step to understanding where we might need more multidisciplinary clinics, and where a new clinic would have the biggest impact on the most people, by understanding where there's already gaps in access to care. We can similarly do that for the VA clinics and understand there's 613 major cities, which is 73 million people that are more than 90 minutes from a VA ALS clinic. And I think that this one's really powerful because it not only looks at where those gaps in care are, it's actually also mapping these points in blue. So the red polygons are showing us that 90-minute drive time. These blue dots are representing the population of veterans in every single census tract across the United States. And so the places that are the darkest blue are the places where we have the most veterans. And so we can see that places that would be of particular concern to us are places outside of those red polygons that are the darkest blue. Those are the places where we have the most potential for high numbers of veterans with ALS that really have very limited access to the kinds of care that they need and deserve. Now, one of the things that we've also been looking at in addition to clinics is also clinical trial sites. And so this is looking at the Healy platform clinics across the country, 72 Healy ALS platform trial sites in the US, and similarly looking at those drive times. In this case, another important way of looking at it is in relationship to how many people even have access to a car. Now, this is access to any kind of car, and we know that of course, transportation is one of the biggest challenges of living with ALS, that the vehicle has to be able to have a ramp to transport a lot of equipment, your wheelchair. And so this map, which shows big gaps, even just for access to any car, is bad. But we know that it would be significantly worse if we had a map that showed the darker areas here are places where people have no access to a car, where the average family has 0 cars in their home. And there's a lot of people who have no car, let alone a car that is capable of doing the kind of transport necessary for ALS patients. So understanding those gaps is really important. It's this idea that it's not just about understanding access, it's also about understanding who is most impacted by that lack of access, right? Because everybody's not impacted equally by limited access. Some people are able to kind of overcome that I know inconvenience makes it sound less bad than it is, but for some it becomes like a really big inconvenience, and for some it's truly a barrier to care, right? Now the kind of last thing that I want to talk about is that there's a lot of different ways that we can use spatial analysis to understand access. So in this case, we were for most of the maps that I showed, we were looking at 90-minute drive times. But that really leaves just a big chunk of the United States blank. And all we can say is, well, they're more than 90 minutes away from a clinic, but we can actually get a lot more specific than that. We can understand exactly how far away they are from the closest clinic. And so that's this analysis that I've been working on. I'm going to switch over to the live map. And so we're looking at over 1,000 major cities across the United States and their distance to the closest clinic, the dots in blue. And so what we can do, well, first of all, we can see that there's some really long lines here. Those are the drives that folks would have to take to get to those clinics. But we can also look at the distribution of that data. So what we know is that on average, it's actually from these major cities, it's about a 70-minute drive time to the closest clinic on average. But actually there's over 50 major cities that have more than a 3-hour drive to the closest clinic, and some are over 7-hour drives. And that's an untenable distance to travel. That's truly a barrier to care. And so understanding where those are is really, really important for us as we think about where we're going to need, where we need more clinics and how we justify and allocate resources to build those clinics or to build out the capabilities of those clinics. And once we have information like that, we can also use spatial analysis. And we're really passionate about helping to do spatial analysis for the community to think about things like identifying the best locations for new clinics. So we can do things like allocation. And one of the most important things that we also need in order to do this kind of allocation and thinking about the best places for clinics is having a really accurate count of people living with ALS. And so I know another call to action is, if you haven't done so already, please register with the CDC's ALS Registry, because that information can really help us do the spatial analysis that says, hey, if we put a clinic here, we could serve X thousands of people in this area within this distance. And we can say that that's a perfect place. There's no better place to put one in the United States than right here. We'll serve the most people. And so being able to do that kind of analysis and make data-driven decisions about such an important aspect of care is really powerful aspect of having this data. Like, the reason for this data to exist is so that we can do this kind of analysis and really make a difference. Now, with that, that's my part. I'm going to pass it over to Kylan, who's going to talk about something that I know I already saw some interest in the chat about being able to share clinic experiences. So Kylan, take it away, and also just tell me what you need from me as I scroll through, please.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lauren. Hi, everybody. My name is Kylan Morris, and I am the daughter of the late and great I Am ALS warrior, Sandy Morris. And so Mom, as I'm assuming most of you know, passed away in August of this last year. In the weeks leading up to her heading off to her next assignment, her and Pat were in collaboration on a project that was going to combine Pat's amazing maps with Mom's ability to see the broken area of ALS land and see how to bridge that gap a bit. So the ALS Clinic Survey was born, Clinic Experience Survey was born out of Pat and Mom seeing that there's opportunity here. So this could be the ultimate ALS clinic solution. So this really could be locating clinics, identifying gaps in location and care in clinics, and most importantly, being able to share experiences between clinics with people living with ALS. No one knows the disease better than a person living with it or a family who's caretaking for someone living with it. So the ALS Clinic Experience Survey is what, if we're able to Yelp review, Google review restaurants, why would we not be able to share experiences on one of the most important parts of a person living with ALS's care journey? So Lauren will move down. Perfect. And so those who knew Mom knew she was an uncomfortable disruptor, and so did realize these things with other areas in I Am ALS land, like the PACT ratings, and being able to just really bridge the gap between what needs to be done and bring tools from the normal world to ALS land. So this was being able to locate the nearest clinic. We live pretty rural, so we're about 3.5 hours outside of San Francisco. But when we get into the city, we have 3 really great clinic options in CPMC, UCSF, and Stanford. So Mom was excellent at doing her homework and knowing what she wanted when she arrived there. As most of us know, it's pretty difficult to get an ALS body anywhere. 3.5 hours was really tough with us. So by the time we got in there, Mom's priority was making sure that her neurologist was actively looking for promising clinical trials and treatment options for her. And so this was very important for us to be able to spend the 3.5 hours moving there to a clinic that really was going to be making the difference. Mom called it the Preserve Sandy Project. So we wanted to be able to make sure we were capitalizing on that time. The ALS Clinic Experience Survey is already showing to be a pretty impactful tool for the community. One of Mom's good friends, Glenn, realized that if this was available to him at the beginning of his care journey, he would have spent way less time and effort going to a different clinic in the very beginning of being diagnosed. Another caregiver that I just heard from this morning was letting me know that she wishes that her ALS physician would have brought up non-invasive ventilation so that her husband could get like 6 more purposeful months out of his life. And I know that for my family was the biggest deal, is that we were prolonging and providing the most quality care we could for Mom so that she would be able to stay with us longer. And so with this, we can just keep moving down, Lauren. So the ALS Clinic Experience Survey is basically a starting point for what you should be expecting to talk to your physician at clinic about. And there is on the link, we'll be sharing a place there for a PDF printout. So you can, if you're newly diagnosed with ALS, then you can print it out, bring it in, and make sure that you're hitting all of the key points that you would like to be talking about. Also, that is, it really goes from how was the parking situation to how well did my neurologist know what upcoming trials were they recommending the right things? Was I being taken care of? Am I able to elevate the care that I'm receiving at clinic? And that's ultimately the goal of this survey. It's not a one and done survey. It's hopefully it's going to be a living document. Then the more that we get, the more surveys that are taken, we're able to fill that database and make sure that we are having a really comprehensive, robust place to send new people living with ALS for a better starting point, because as we all know, we lost the luxury of time upon diagnosis. And so already we have 135 surveys taken for 71 clinics. And it is, the survey is eye gaze friendly. And that was very important, as both ALS badasses are my mom and Pat, who began this, and they were both big eye gazers. So we can keep heading down. Awesome. And so just to touch on what you would see for the results after you would take the survey, you would be able to peruse the dashboard, and that really does include all of the notes and important information that people who have taken it, caregivers who are living it, have provided for you, so you can start with a bit of a leg up. And so Lauren, just above there is, sorry to scroll up just a little bit, just give a flavor of the survey. There's that link right there. And so when you do go in to take the survey, you'll be able to see that it's just a great deal of questions. If you just want to do a quick scroll down that, Lauren. Perfect. And it includes questions. When was your last visit? Are you still attending this clinic? Why or why not? And it's really just to gather the right information of, I was taken care of really well. It's a place to bolster your neurologist, and it's a place to see where we can identify the gaps in the care, and it's hopefully to be a transparent place for the clinics to be able to see, oh, wow, this is how they felt after leaving clinic. And so Lauren, we can head back to the story map. And we can keep on going. Perfect. And so my call to action for you all is, please, if you have attended clinic in the last 2 years, please click on the link we'll be dropping, and go share your experience with the rest of the community, because your story matters, and it really might just make the difference for a person who is just diagnosed or is currently living with it, who is needing your advice, because we're all better together. And with that, I will be tossing it to Brian to give us a look into the maps for advocacy.
So thank you so much, Kylan. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you to whoever just warned me. I was just blabbing on to myself. I'm really excited to take a couple minutes and just share some of the maps and information that Pat has built out to show how these tools can be used, not only to show where gaps in care are and how to better understand care, but also use them for advocacy, because they can be incredibly powerful tools. And the one thing I want to drive home here is any one of you can use these, share these, and also build them out yourselves to use and to share with residents, share with coworkers, share with your friends in this fight. So Pat has been working to develop maps for thousands of ALS advocates who fight every day to pass legislation, policy, and accelerate access to treatments, improve insurance coverage, and give people living with ALS a voice to fight for their lives. So Pat's hope here is really to help you all become advocates in this fight and to use these tools. And he'd like me to dedicate this presentation to Sandy Morris, Nicole Sumbaras, Deb Paust, and Michelle Lorenz. So all of you are probably familiar with this story and some of these dashboards and these maps that were built out by Pat and the team. And they really kick off some of the success of what it can mean to use maps and use these tools in this fight. And for those that are new to these, these are some of the dashboards that were built out to track the Act for ALS and how it was getting, people were starting to sign on as co-signers of the bill. And you can see on the top level of the slide there, we have the House in June and the Senate in June. And in the bottom, you have those that were signed on as sponsors in December in the House and the Senate in December. So over time, we were able to track and see who was coming on as sponsors and co-sponsors. And it gave you this incredible geographic vantage point of understanding where support was and also where those gaps were. One of the ways that we were able to use maps as well wasn't just with this big national tool and this national picture, was starting to look at the co-sponsors by state. And so one of the things that Pat learned and the team learned from this was not only tracking that federal level, but what are the ways we can influence people at the state and local level in their specific districts. Here you can see a gallery of the different state maps, and all these were then posted on social media to drive people to then pick up the phone and make calls. As we all know, it's still one of the most effective ways to get the ear of your representative is to just get them on the line, or at least get into their office to let it know that this is an important issue that they need to sign on to. So here's an example of some more detail inside of the maps and the dashboards that were used. So not only were we tracking who was the sponsor and the co-sponsor, you can see here it's down to the specific representative or senator saying, did they vote yes or did they vote nay? How can you get in touch with that individual? Like their links in Twitter, their phone numbers, and also then feeding in other information similar to kind of what Lauren was showing, that is something that you want to see for each of those districts or states. How many veterans and what is the population in each of those areas? How many ALS clinics are in that area? And again, trying to put a call for action inside of each of those pop-ups to tell people they can click and they can go and actually take an action when they see those. And then I love this too. So Michelle Lorenz had reminded, you can go on social media, you can use these dashboards, you can use these maps, and then drive home the thanks and the support back to those representatives just to let them know you're following up on the actions you're seeing them take. And this was an incredible idea to then use, and was also then fed into these maps, was doing research to look at, we all remember the Ice Bucket Challenge years back. And this is an incredible example where there was research done to go find what representatives, what senators had actually gone through the Ice Bucket Challenge, and then to ensure that we were getting their support for the Act for ALS. And in this case, just a snapshot of Ted Cruz there, doing the Ice Bucket Challenge. And so to bring that to him and say, you supported it then, do you still support it now? And I love this picture Pat put in here. So he says this is the best map he ever made. To just pull this up, blindly, you'd say, well, it's just a map of the United States colored red. But this showed hours and hours of tireless work from thousands of individuals making calls to their senators, to their reps. And this map and this dashboard was then being updated in real time to let us see and track that progress toward that goal. And really just incredible to see the ability to make this kind of action happen at the national scale. So for me and for Pat and for all of us, the next step is that the battle isn't over. Every 2 years, every 6 years, there's new representatives coming in, there's new members coming in. And so the fight needs to continue, and that outreach needs to continue. And the maps and this data can then help us with that advocacy to ensure we're reaching out to the right people, reaching out to the right reps, and that we're driving home the specific issues that we want to reinforce with them. So I'm going to go through a couple examples quickly of the 118th Congress and a couple different ways we can use these maps to, do some better advocacy and outreach. In one simple example, here are all the newly elected House members. So none of these House members signed on for the Act for ALS because they were just signed in and, just sworn in only a few weeks back. So these are some of those people we can make calls, emails, and do outreach to immediately to get that on their docket if this is an issue that matters. Same thing with senators. So 7 new senators who just were sworn in. So this map is showing those that are members of the ALS caucus. So currently, and this is in the House. So who are the current caucus reps? And in the last Congress are 129. So where are those places we need to target? Same thing for the Senate. So what states are represented, have members that are in the caucus? This map's color coded to say which ones have both senators in, which ones have 1 senator or no senators in. Who are those members that voted for the Act for ALS? So this is for the House. Who are those senators that voted for the Act for ALS in the Senate and the 7 newly elected senators? As has already been noted by Lauren and others in the research, veterans are much more likely to get diagnosed. So where are those places where specifically a member of Congress or a rep is a veteran? So there are over 80 veterans in the House and 16 veterans in the Senate, and all of these can be directly targeted with targeted messaging. What are the number of ALS clinics in each of these House districts? And you can see the map also being color-coded, not only with the districts to say how many clinics are there, but where are those clinics specifically located? And then ALS clinics by state for the Senate. So from all of this information, we can start to distill down who are those potential ALS caucus members. And again, this is that list of those that were veterans in the House. So these are those individuals we could start to do that initial outreach for, and to be those targets to really ensure we're driving home the impact that we can have with this kind of outreach. Here's another one with the 118 districts with ALS clinics who are not yet members of the ALS caucus. Some of these members might not even be aware that there's an ALS clinic in their district. 34 districts with the veteran population of 10% or greater. And these, again, are not members of the ALS caucus. You can think now of the dozens or hundreds of ways we can chew through this information to start to really, order those areas that we can do that targeted outreach to. And then I wanted to take a second, and this is getting to how we can start to build targeted advocacy maps and applications, and also how any of you can build out similar applications to target specific communities, or take a tool like this and get it out into the public and share it so that anybody can then engage with it and use it. In this example, I'm pulling up the Neuron, and the goal here is how can we do outreach to our representatives, to senators, where Neuron, they have not kind of signed on as advocates or supporters, with the goal being, can we get the FDA to come in and hold a public hearing? And senators, the reps, it's not their job to flip this and get this approved, but if we can get a public hearing in place, we can at least have voices get heard on the floor of the House or of the Senate. And in this application, if I click, what this does is it pulls up the phone script for someone to use. And you can see here, it's actually missing their office numbers, their home office numbers. And some of these might be related to the fact that these are new members of the House, or these are new members of the Senate. And so the goal here is making it as easy as possible for somebody to click and then take an action and make a call. And we're putting the script right inside of this. And so I'm going to show you, how you could build out something like this in 2 minutes time, an application just like this. So all of this data and what GIS is really powered by just a table. And so here is all the basic information under the hood. I mean, these beautiful maps and these applications Pat has built out and our team has created are really just tabular information like you can see here. And so what the GIS does and what these maps do is it lets you take that information and then turn it into something a bit more powerful. And so I've got 2 layers on the map, one for the House, and then this one is showing the Senate. And I'm going to start with the House, and I have it symbolized just to show who the newly elected members are in the House. And those in the darker blue color are those that are the newly elected members. And so what I want to do is when somebody clicks on the map, which I'll do right now, let me click. The pop-up I get, or all the information I get is kind of ugly. This isn't going to really make someone take kind of a targeted, action or do something with this. But what we can do really, really quickly is I'm going to click in the pop-ups. And instead of having a list of fields or just a list of information, I want to put in here to have the name of the representative or the senator pop up. And then I'm also going to put in some additional information. And I'm going to kind of cheat here and put in a bunch of source code. But I'm going to click. And you can see there in about 2 seconds, I was able to take all of the details and the information that were inside that map and now present it to somebody in a really, really powerful way. I'm going to save my map. And now I'm going to share this as an application. And so we can take that map item and that data, and we can take that and now we can, share it out to make it something that's really, really powerful to share with anyone. And I could drop this into Twitter. I could put this in LinkedIn. And now anybody has the ability to go and make this call. And so I'm going to hit publish here. And I'm going to open this link up. And I'm going to launch. Let me click somewhere where there's actually a rep. So in 2 minutes time, I was able to take this map. I could take this link, send this to my friends. I could embed this anywhere I want to. And the part here I love is we've embedded the phone numbers to be clickable. So I can click this phone number for Rick Crawford in Arkansas, and this will make a call directly from the browser for me. And instantly I can get in touch with their office. So I wanted to walk through that Maps for Advocacy. These can be incredibly powerful tools you can use to reach out and engage. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Amanda Stanko, who all of you are probably have seen and know or well aware of. She's going to walk through some of the ways that you can use maps and these tools for research. So take it away, Amanda.
So as Brian mentioned, I can look at some environmental risk maps. So, it's done some research and analysis on more than just where things are, but why is ALS? Why is it here? So looking at some information, we're looking at, we've kind of mapped, Pat calls this kind of like the kitchen sink. We've put a lot of different information in one place, and it's for good reason, because these are all environmental risks. So we have things here, we have the Department of Defense sites. We know that military are more prone to be diagnosed with ALS. So we want to start looking at some of the things in the environment for that reason. We have national priorities list sites. This is all data that's publicly available, and we just merged it all in one place. We also have the facility registry services. These are just toxic release inventory. So where are toxins being released in the environment? And then also when we look closer, we also have mapped the motor neuron deaths by county. So where are the largest effects from all of these different variables on the map? So as I move around, you see the count changes, whatever's in that view only is being summarized. But let's say, I'm from Detroit originally, so let's just see in that area, what does it look like? So you can start to see the different, we have a lot of active sites. We can just look at these active sites, but we can drill down to the neighborhoods. What is exactly in these areas? We have active facility register services, and we can start to drill down on what are the chemicals, what is being released in this area. Let me go, for example, on this one. So we have some industrial information, and all of these click out these are all links, so you can really start diving deep into what's happening here. So, for example, I'm going to click on one of these PDFs, their final notice from the registry. And what was the final results? What did they find at that site? So think of looking at this for your area. Where are you from, or where have you lived? And this is something that we're looking at too, because it's, it's what's in the environment. I'm trying to understand why, and we're working with other organizations, like we were talking to the CDC and Johns Hopkins and the Veterans Affairs, looking at different ways we can all come together and share this information to really understand more about ALS and what are the causes. So you might be wondering, where do I find all these maps after the presentation? We've gone through a lot of stuff today, and it might seem like, wow, that's a lot of information. Well, it is. And think of Pat Dolan making all these maps with iGaze device, like tens of thousands of clicks. Pretty much everything you've seen, definitely from Brian, Kylan. Pat is just one Superman mapper, one after another. Those state maps, it's unbelievable how many maps he's been producing over the past couple of years. Well, this is what we've combined everything here. So in the ALS Geospatial Hub, this is where we're displaying what we're doing for mapping for advocacy, mapping for care, and mapping for a cure. And this is Pat's motto of our group. The goal of our group is bringing the clinic information together by geography to discover patterns and relationships to accelerate research, improve care, and advocate for the community. So some of the things you can expect to find here, we'll give you the link to this and you'll be able to search for it. So you could find a clinic. If your clinic's not on the map, you can add a clinic. And as we spoke about earlier, sharing your clinic experience. So I'm going to show you quickly that dashboard. I know you got a preview of it before, but this is the results of the clinic experience. So what were people's clinic experiences like? We could say we only want to know what the excellent experiences were like, and look specifically at which clinics were excellent experiences for people. But we also looked at a lot of different things, a lot of different details in the survey, the experience survey. So we're asking about clinical trials, clinic administration. Do you have equipment loan? What are the facilities like? The parking. These are very important details, in making a choice for where you want to receive care. So in order to make this as effective and helpful as possible, we do need your help to share your clinic experiences. And this is any clinic you've attended in the past 2 years. And this, Kylan had mentioned, and I know we previewed the survey, but now that you've seen the results, you'll kind of see how it all comes together. We're trying to get a little bit of information here, but all that detail about the neurologist, the therapies and services, it's a lot of, do I agree, not agree? So it's some questions, but it's pretty straightforward and user-friendly and designed with iGaze in mind as well. So yeah, we would love for you to provide your clinic experience and share that with the community as well. So yeah, we partnered, of course, with R1, as Kylan has mentioned before. We've also worked on an international map. So for the first time, we're mapping all the ALS clinics around the globe and looking at what services are offered around the world as well. So maybe, say you go into Italy, there's a clinic here. We're going to start, what we're doing is with this survey, we're trying to understand which services are offered everywhere in the world. So say you were somewhere kind of a care desert that we don't have information for, at least you could find somewhere nearby where you can receive the services you're looking for. So that's our goal, is to kind of take this on a global scale and see how much we can help around the world people find care that's best for them. So I want to just, here we go. Sorry for this, but I want to just bring home that we do need your help. So we do want you to register for the National ALS Registry with the CDC, and we can provide these links as well after the presentation. So you can go ahead and go there as well if you haven't. We'll have the ALS Clinic Experience Survey and the ALS Geospatial Hub that I just shared with you as well. And we also want to show, how can you get in touch with us in the future beyond here? So this is Pat's information, the mapping for nonprofits.aol. Or of course, Pat's very active on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I can't emphasize enough how great it is to follow him on his social media, because he's just pushing this advocacy so far, and it's really great to watch and be a part of. So I want to close here. Pat gave me a closing statement, so I'm going to read this here, and this is Pat's words. So Pat says, in July of 2016, I was diagnosed with ALS. One of the hardest parts on this ALS journey was having to retire from Esri. I love my job and the friendships I made during my 16-year career, but I was extremely fortunate. Esri and friends rallied around me and supported the idea of developing the hub to organize and map ALS information. A special thanks to all the mappers who have donated their time and talent, especially to Corey Kaliski on designing and developing the ALS Geospatial Hub to combine all this work. And thanks to Lauren, Kylan, Brian, Amanda, and my bride, Pat's bride, Mara, for making this presentation come to life. Finally, I want to say thank you to Brian and Sandra for bringing the ALS community together. When I was diagnosed in 2016, the only way to be active in the community was to be a donor generator or a data point for research. The information of I Am ALS gave us all the opportunity to have our voice heard and to be an active member in changing the ALS landscape. Thank you, Brian, Sandra, Michael Lecker, Kali Hurtis, Deb Paus, and the I Am ALS team for your tireless effort to make sure our voices are heard and helping us be an active member in the ALS battle. Thank you all. That's from Pat.